moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off came out in 1986. But I think in a lot of ways, the generations of teens and 20-somethings alive now need to watch and understand it even more than the ones that it initially released for. The world is full of distractions. We are almost constantly inundated with some new thing to focus on, whether it be the macro expectations of school and work, or the micro distractions of scrolling endlessly through our phones. While modern things like social media, video games, and the 24/7 news cycle either didn't exist or were not as prominent when the movie initially released, it ultimately gets at the same message.
Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
So much of our lives are spent attending to our responsibilities, and often this can leave us blindsided by time. It's no coincidence that so many people share the experience of feeling like they one day woke up as whatever age they are now. Sometimes the daily toil of school and work can turn into a dangerous sense of monotony, and instead of taking every day in stride, we fall into an almost robotic routine. The film does a great job of portraying this to us in the way that it characterizes high school. The teachers speak in horribly monotone voices to classrooms of unengaged students, so bored out of their minds at the subjects being taught that they're constantly on the cusp of dozing off into oblivion. It's an unfortunately relatable experience for almost everyone. Education and likewise work are meant to be fulfilling endeavors that enhance your life, but sadly this has fallen to the wayside. For Ferris, and likewise for a lot of us, this doesn't really feel like life, it just feels like a regimen. Well, what does it mean to really live life then? If you're Ferris, it involves a lot of goofing off and generally having all the fun you can. Ferris is an interesting character. He's sporadic, impulsive, and a generally funny guy. He breaks the fourth wall frequently throughout the movie, often relaying his personal philosophy to the audience directly.
It's not that I condone fascism, or any ism for that matter. Isms, in my opinion, are not good. A person should not believe in an ism, he should believe in himself.
That's just the thing. Ferris doesn't really believe in anything except himself, and so he seeks to maximize his life in all the things he wants to do. Through the character of Principal Rooney, we see the exact opposite. See, Ferris is not just a character, but a symbol.
Ferris Bueller, you're my hero.
Everyone loves Ferris. An over-the-top campaign even ensues to help him with his made-up sickness. Rooney sees Ferris as a bad influence, a linchpin to the culture of the other students, and threatens to lead them down a similar path of disrespecting authority. Because of this, he steps into the role of antagonist in an attempt to foil Ferris's plans of goofing around and to bring him beneath the heel of the system. Ferris seeks to validate his way of life by enforcing it on his biggest hurdle, Cameron. While Ferris's reaction to the system is to actively oppose it, Cameron avoids it through his hypochondriatic tendencies. While Ferris pushes back against the tidal wave, Cameron lets himself sink to the bottom. Thus, the movie becomes a battle of ideologies. Will Ferris's bohemian attitude rescue his friend from the clutches of passivity, or will Ed Rooney succeed in bringing him and his companions back in line? Ferris's ideal day involves a lot of showing, as opposed to the school's function to merely tell. The two classes that we are privy to are a history class and an English one. While the history teacher drones on about tax policies without any real opportunity for the class to participate, Ferris actually has him and his friends go out and experience historical areas of Chicago for themselves. While students are tediously lectured on their required reading, the gang actually goes to a museum to look at and appreciate art in person. This is a contrast that is very reminiscent of a poem by Walt Whitman called "When I Heard the Learned Astronomer." It's a short piece that reads, "When I heard the learned astronomer, when the proofs, the figures, were ranged in columns before me, when I was shown the charts and diagrams to add, divide, and measure them, when I sitting heard the learned astronomer, where he lectured with much applause in the lecture room, how soon unaccountable I became tired and sick, till rising and gliding out I wandered off by myself, in the mystical moist night air, and from time to time looked up in perfect silence at the stars." In this poem, the narrator is sitting in a classroom listening to a lecturer tell all the mathematical and scientific elements on the subject of astronomy, and he becomes completely dejected by it. Instead, he leaves the classroom to simply go and look up at the night sky, appreciating it in and of itself. Ferris embodies the spirit of this poem in stride, going out and actually doing many of the things that are simply taught to him in class. It's these kinds of experiences that actually shape and change people. And in the museum, this is absolutely the case for Cameron. During this famous scene, Cameron is enthralled with a George Seurat painting. It cuts back and forth between him and a child in it, coming in closer and more intimately with each successive shot. Cameron seems to undergo an illuminating experience, something of a wake-up to the haze that he's been living his life under. Interestingly, it isn't exactly Ferris himself that drives this change. It's his insistence on going out and experiencing the world. Ferris merely opens the door and encourages others to walk through it. Because of this, his convictions are in a way unstoppable. The world will surely always be full of art and fun and life. We simply have to take the leap to experience it. Ferris gets Cameron to take his father's car out for their joyride, much to his dismay. And this car becomes a representation of Cameron's relationship to his father. Cameron ends up absolutely wrecking it near the end of the film, but instead of the sense of dread and anxiety that he would have felt at the beginning of the movie, he is now emboldened to face his father head-on and deal with the consequences. In this way, Ferris has kind of won regardless of whether or not Principal Rooney manages to catch him. Cameron was living a life full of apathy, frozen in fear at the idea of actually going out and living life at all. Not only has Ferris gotten him to venture out and live, he's convinced Cameron to live his life to the absolute fullest. This challenge, thus, is thrust onto us. With all of his speeches directed at the camera, we are invited to follow in Ferris's footsteps. Look around yourself, at your life, at what makes up your everyday, and whether or not you've allowed it to swallow you up. Remember to find the soul in everything that you study, and discover the meaning in everything that you work on. And don't forget to take a break here and there. Remember, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around every once in a while, you'll miss it.